Coming up in this episode of Finding Common Ground.
With Trump, I think that's the power that he carries, is that it's a chaos theory kind of guy. He relishes in the fact that you just don't know what I'm going to do.
I got a call from United Nations because Vaseline was well distributed in Black Africa.
Is there a white Africa?
I was going to ask the same thing.
Yeah, is there a white Africa? I'm just asking the question.
No. I think you do it the way Bill Maher did it. You sit down and have a conversation with people that aren't like-minded.
You know who set that up was Kid Rock.
Kid Rock is the voice of reason in this world. God help us.
What
He's up here an ambassador. Ambassador Rock, baby. Ambassador Rock.
There are two sides to every coin.
How do we deal with racial issues when they affect relationships?
Finding common ground on all those issues that we come against.
There's black and there's white.
And I think as Christians, we have to learn how to get together because we're not in heaven.
I've met more interesting people just by God just bringing them in.
Republicans and Democrats.
But a lot of times, when it comes to race and it comes to culture and it comes to perception, even as Christians, we don't always understand. We look at it through our lenses.
There's Bill.
I grew up in a suburb of Cleveland called Parma.
Any black people in Palmer?
There was not one.
Not one black person,
Not
Bill?
one.
Come
Not
on, Bill.
one.
You got to have one. A
Nope.
token black person? A token?
And there's Odell.
I grew up in Charleston, South Carolina, public housing, single mom, divorced single mom of 4 kids. And I came up through segregation and all that kind of stuff.
If a black person drove through the town, the police would stop and escort him out.
Bill and Odell are finding common ground.
A part of what we have to do is listen to each other, find the common ground, and question, not questioning you like you're on a witness stand, but questioning you for a better understanding. Father God, we just come to you in the precious name of Jesus Christ. We just thank you for your grace and your mercy and all that you do for all of us. In Jesus' name we pray and believe, amen.
Amen. Amen. Dear Heavenly Father, just thank you for allowing Dory and I to be part of Passover. I don't know if you'd call it a ceremony, but certainly it's a ritual, and it was great to understand the Jewish customs and beliefs, and to share fellowship with them. Lord, we ask that you keep an eye on them and in our country as we go through these trials and tribulations that we're going to talk about today. And thank you for our 2 guests here, Kelly and the Maverick. Amen.
Lord, in these uncertain times, give us wisdom, patience, and clarity. Help us lead with integrity, listen with empathy, and seek common ground even in economic storms. Guide our hands and steady our hearts. In your name we pray. Amen.
Amen.
So did you go to Seder this weekend or on Friday?
I did. I went to Seder at a Orthodox Jewish, it was a traditional Jewish. It was 6.5 hours. We started at 6:30 and ended at about 1:30. We didn't start eating till 11:30. And that's the
theme. They tried to kill us. Let's eat.
Oh my goodness. There was plenty of food.
You know what?
Plenty of food.
That was our friend Kelly, and we have just a star-studded lineup. We have the Maverick here. You all know we have Kelly, and we're going to get started.
We're going to call this, I was trying to figure out what to call this group, because it's so eclectic.
Well, I was saying before the show started, I'm like, Marty, he's always just so cool, so calculated, so well-spoken and articulate. And then you have me, I'm like a spaz. I'm like, who knows where this guy's going to go? You're like, he's on fire.
He's traditional baseball, and you're banana baseball.
Exactly. That's fun. Have you seen that?
I saw it on TV on 60 Minutes. It was really good. So here's the name I think what I would call ourselves. The 4 Horsemen.
The 4 Horsemen. Okay.
In addition, the $1 Million Round Table. Yeah.
So how did Marty get the nickname the Maverick? I'd like to get a little background, please.
I think Odell gave it to him.
Yeah, Marty just don't give a doggone. Marty don't give a doggone. Marty if he believes this need to be tackled, he's going to tackle it, and I've always respected him for that. You don't know where he's coming from, man. He has his own opinion. He's
well
much his own
too.
man. Yeah, that's who he is. So that's how we gave him the man. But I tried to find a theme song for our show today, right?
Oh, really? Did you come up with something?
I came up with something. The $1 Million Round Table, and it was like the OJ's money, 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 and guess what happened?
What?
When I went to see the doggone song, that doggone Donald Trump had taken it because that was the theme song
From The
for The
Apprentice.
Apprentice.
Yeah.
Money, 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 money. And I said, Trump's in there now playing with Tariff, and all he's doing is doing a second versions of The Apprentice. That's all it is.
Did you get
That's all it
did
is.
you get tipped off when he was going to give a 90-day reprieval? Did you get tipped off to go buy some stock?
I don't have enough money to get tipped off, ticked off, or any of those off. But Kelly, what did you do? Because you are the $1 million man, and you were in what was it? Mexico City. You have tariffs. You have borders stuff coming from Mexico, coming from China, coming from everywhere, man. How you doing, my brother?
I'm hanging in there. Can't see straight. It's like what's the old adage? May we live in interesting times? Well, we certainly do. I don't, I guess we're going to dive in pretty deep in this topic today at some level. I don't know if we're going to make any sense of it.
We were going to try and tear apart what is a tariff and how does it affect your economy and then affect you as an individual.
Well, I mean, for me personally, as a business person, all it has done is just create a high level of uncertainty, and uncertainty in any business is just, a bad place. And so, we've had people just deferring decisions. We have people stalling, and the 90 days really effectively made it worse. I mean, we would be much better off if we just knew what it was. Is it going to be 10% for everybody? Is it, just China? When I was here before, I guess it's what two or three weeks ago, we talked about some of the scenarios and what would happen. And clearly, one of my theories was that Trump might blink if the bond market became a problem, and clearly Trump blinked.
Yeah.
So Kelly, we were talking earlier about sauna and a cold plunge. And I think, when you look at how the markets have been over the years, they're kind of like a warm bath that's been heated up over time, and you don't really notice from, 1 degree to another. And now this is the cold plunge.
Yeah.
This is the jumping into the opposite side. So it's definitely a shock to the system. Where do you think the opportunities are? Because in chaos, there's always some opportunity.
Yeah, I mean, that was my dad's business adage. I mean, that's really where you seize opportunity. And I guess I just have to say, I really don't know. And I can't say that I know until we know what the map looks like. I've always been a guy who's just like, tell me what the rules are, and then I can play the game. But right now there seemingly is no rules. So I don't even have like a starting point. I mean, we've completely divested ourselves of China. So, I mean, I'm insulated from China, but I'm knee deep in Vietnam. I mean, that's 75% of my business is
What's the tariff for them?
Well, it was 46, and now they got the 90-day reprieval, so they're at 10. But still, 10% is a huge number. I mean, we in my world, we deal in very modest margin. So our margin, is probably somewhere in the 18 to 24 range. And so you're talking about taking, a third or more of my margin. And that's the interesting thing about how tariffs work. People talk about them as a tax. Of course, they're a tax because it's going to create inflation. Prices are going to go up. But really, it puts pressure on the businesses because no business is just going to say, oh, okay, we take your 10% price increase. They're going to be like, we're going to share in this pain. And so it's going to erode my margins. It's going to erode their margins because they can't pass it on to the consumer because they already have sticker shock because they're still dealing with all of this COVID inflation. And so really it's putting pressure on the businesses, and in the case of retailers, it's putting pressure on their margins, and their cost of doing business has gone through the roof. And so they're already in a precarious position because they've been forced to raise their margins just to cover their people costs, to cover all of the things that are associated with doing business. So, it comes back to Marty's original question: where's the opportunity? I don't know.
I know.
Where do you see the opportunity?
I know. The black guy know what opportunities are. Let me tell you what the black guy says about the opportunities. Because some people get in the carve out. Some people, smartphones, computers, semiconductors, flat screen TVs. I mean, why do some people get carve out, Marty, and some people don't?
Well, they probably have a lobbyist. But and political connections.
All those-
Maybe they
I
paid
mean, that-
millions of dollars to the Trump campaign.
That's that's going back throughout history. I think that those that are kind of in the ear of the government kind of weigh in. I mean, we see that anything from local politics here in Greensboro to national, international politics. But I do think one of the things, Kelly, you mentioned that you divested out of China, and probably one of the reasons for that was the intellectual property theft.
It's a big issue. It's a big issue.
And there's an estimate that China represents, it's about $600 billion a year that they're stealing in intellectual property each year. So, I think one of the things that maybe, hopefully, this is all about is kind of a shock to the system on tariffs, getting everybody to think about playing on the same fair trade team, and then a coalition of countries working together to rein in China's intellectual property theft. That's what I'm hoping for. But you never know what people's motivations are.
I completely agree with you. On the last show, my theory was that this is always, to me, has always been about China, and it's been about China on so many different levels. I mean, no need to rehash those issues, but intellectual property rights was a huge issue, and it chased our family businesses, with one exception. We still have a fasteners business, and we have a certain type of fastener there that we can only make in China, and part of it is just because of all the chemicals and all the things that you could never produce it here in the United States with the EPA
issue.
Are there prisoners working in this place?
No, this is in Shenzhen, Dongguan area. That's not that's the extreme west part of Urumqi, that area
Russia.
near the stands. But we left China early because we would bring them great ideas. We would bring them design. We would bring them the things that they needed to produce. And then we would leave, and the next guy would come in, and they'd share with them what we just brought them. And that's part of the bad. That's the bad side of being in a trading business when you don't control your own production. But typically, those designs are respected. And the problem is there's no avenue to go after them in Chinese courts. And then all the other things that are associated with China, whether it be their currency manipulation or human rights, whatever the case may be. But it definitely chased us out very, very early. We saw that it was a bad hand for us. And we actually went to higher labor rate countries because we felt that our intellectual property rights were more valuable than buying it cheaper. Yeah. And so we ended up in Southeast Asia, in Thailand, Malaysia, Indonesia, and now Vietnam.
How do you stop Vietnam and all them from taking your intellectual rights?
Well,
design rights.
It's funny. I think that there's always the risk, and I guess it just depends on how big a hand you carry. If your business is more important to them than the next guy that walks into the door and they try and share that idea with, then you have leverage. If you're just a regular person, you bring in a regular idea, but you can't really dominate a factory, then you're at their mercy. But that's everywhere right now in Asia.
Okay.
I think it's also it's their government, their courts, their reciprocal agreements. I think they're agreeing to play by fair trade, and so China just isn't. China's playing by their own rules, and that's a challenge. But one of the things you mentioned, regulatory cost, and that I see that we can see that from zoning to EPA restrictions. Labor laws, all kinds of things, some of which I think are great, and then some of which are really just shifting that to out of sight. And so, we're winding up in this kind of economic slavery around the world where other countries are doing certain things or allowing certain things.
Yeah, it's economic.
We don't want to see, but then, people want to buy the cheap product for. Yep. And I think that's one of the things that tariffs can do is kind of level the playing field a little bit to say, hey, look, if you want this particular product and it's got to be made in this way, it's going to cost X amount to do it the right way. Yep. And, the problem is if you can get it cheaper, or if you've got a country that, someone's starving and they're in India and they need to make money, they're going to pour that caustic chemical out there and not think about the fact that they may not make it 20 years because of it.
100%. It's economic NIMBY, not in my backyard. And I mean, you see it, and it's hard not to be affected by it because you'll go. I mean, I've been in India and I see these kids and they're pouring chemicals and they don't have masks. They don't have on gloves. They're just in flip flops and shorts and no shirt. And maybe we all have a hand in this, but circling back to China, I don't think Trump is wrong. In fact, I think Trump is quite brave. He decided to take them on, and up until last week, I think he thought he could win, and that's kind of the difference between China and America. I mean, if you ask most people who can win a trade war between China and the United States, I would say it's fairly even-handed. We both can shoot each other pretty well. But the one difference that China has,
who wins?
Well, let me just finish this thought, because the one difference that China has is Trump had to blink because the U.S. media and the pressure from the American people. In China, you don't have that. It's a one-party system.
Yeah.
It's my way or the highway.
Yeah.
And I don't know how Trump can, because to do the dirty work, you have to live with it. It's not as though Trump didn't tell us this. I mean, I've seen interviews with Trump going back 20 years on the Oprah Winfrey show, where he's talking about Trumps are a wonderful thing. I mean, this is not new. And the people that were, voted for Trump, they knew this was coming, right? And so it's just, and I'll repeat it again, it's just the message. I feel like he failed to really fireside chat this to make the American people aware. This is what they're doing. This is why we have to do this. Just educating the people rather than just bang. And now you have the shock. And so our media can drive a message however they choose. If you watch Fox News, you get it from one side. If you watch CNN, you watch it from another. If you watch the BBC, you see it from the international perspective. But the difference is we have the freedom of media, and China doesn't. So China can say anything they want. They can do anything they want. They've got us.
Yeah.
They got us.
I initially thought that we were going to get the upper hand because they needed our consumers to consume their products. But as I dug in a little more, I found out that we represent what about 5% of their GDP. So they technically could go to other places.
Do you believe those numbers?
Well,
I mean, that's the other thing.
I don't know. But they had a economist on. He says you got to understand, China has been around 5,000 years. They look at the long view, and we've been around 250, 200, 300 years, and they said we could survive a tariff.
Yeah, but okay, so the argument is that would be, okay, so China had a cultural revolution, right? And so they took away education, they took away creativity, they took away everything. America became a superpower in 250 years. I mean, I think America can withstand this. There's not a question of it. It's just whether or not the American people are willing to here's suffer a little bit.
There's so many things coming from China that we use. Smartphones, the chips. There's certain things that and it takes a long time for manufacturing to build an infrastructure. First off, they're going to say, if I leave China and I go back in the United States, what's the lead time for building? How much is it going to cost me? What's the interest rates going to be? I have to get new equipment. I have to hire all new people and train them. I mean, it's not a short-term thing. You're talking years. Look how long it took to build the battery plant in Toyota, and that was pedal to the metal all the way. They've been doing that for about 3 years now, and they still haven't made a battery.
Yeah, I don't think the jobs relocating back to the U.S. is any sort of a short-term goal. I mean, the short term is revenue generation.
I agree.
And negotiating power.
Yep.
So but I think what got him to kind of rethink was the bond market. Initially, it was a flight to safety, and you saw bond yields drop.
Mm-hmm.
But then there was a little bit of a rebound, the stock market started to come back. You saw bond yields soften, but then they softened a lot, which was, they went up significantly. I think you had the 30-year bond go up to nearly 5%. And so that is starting to show a lack of confidence in the U.S. being able to repay its debts or just in the U.S. overall. And that is what gets a little dangerous at that point, because you can take some inflation if you've got lower interest rate cost. Like we were talking about in the last podcast, if you're buying a house that costs more, but interest rates are half what they were, no problem. People don't even blink an eye. But if interest rates are up and you've got inflation, then you've really got some serious pain that you're going through.
Yeah. And I was telling Kelly before you guys got here that on Meet the Press, there was a fellow that started the largest hedge fund, and they had him talking about because he predicted the 2008 crash and a few other things, and they asked him, what do you think? And he says, well, I'm not into recession yet. He said, there's a risk. Yeah, absolutely. And if we don't do certain things, we will have a recession.
Yeah, but to Marty's point, I mean, the bond market is what really dictates monetary policy. So,
amen. Yeah.
So, I mean, if the
And who holds the most bonds? In the case of our bonds, it's Japan.
Yeah.
Yeah, but with those yields, it's going to keep interest rates high. If interest rates stay high, people aren't going to spend.
Yep,
So if you don't
that's right.
spend, then I mean, it just starts a downward spiral.
Yeah.
Well, let me just say this. We could have asked the OJs back in 1974 for the love of money. It says some people got to have it. Some people, steal from, for the love of money. Some people will steal from their mothers. People will rob their own brothers. People can't even walk the street because they never know who they'll meet. People will lie, rob, and will cheat. People don't care who they hurt or beat. A woman will sell her precious body. And it says, brother, give me a nickel, brother. Can you spare a dime? Money can drive some people out of their minds. For the love of money, don't let money fool you. So we said that we're going to China because we're addicted to cheap stuff, right? So I know China's doing all these bad things, but we stayed in the relationship. What do you think, Marty? Did we leave China or did China leave us?
I think we're addicted. I think we're both kind of addicted to each other right now. And that's
I love
that's the
that.
issue.
It's a bad marriage. It's a bad marriage.
Okay. All right. Well, let's call it what it is. I love that. That's why he's the Maverick.
Ike and Tina.
Today?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, I tell you, my kids went out and got new iPhones as soon as they heard it was going up. Hey, you got a good point, Marty. I think we did have a working relationship. It was probably unfair. I think being the country we are and the background we have.
What does that mean, Bill? Being the country we are and the background we have, for the listening audience, what are you insinuating?
If you go back even to like World War II, where we fought 2 world wars on each part of the coast and won, and then took over Germany and rebuilt Germany, took over Japan, had the Marshall Plan. We're a country that tries to restore things after they're destroyed, and maybe we help destroy it too. But I think in trade, when Ross Perot, when we had NAFTA, when Ross Perot said it's going to be a giant sucking sound, he hit the nail on the head. It just took all the factories and the jobs gone, and we haven't recovered from that. And we did it because we were addicted to cheap things, and we thought we could. Part of it was, I think they thought, if we can get tied economically, and that's what Europe thought they could do with Russia, tie him up economically so that if he did attack Ukraine, putting a ban on him would cause problems. They forgot that, Putin's a tough guy and he's got oil. So he's able to keep his machine going, and he's got a good propaganda program. But
not as good. His propaganda program, Bill, is not as good as ours.
Yeah, maybe you're right. But we were the country that went out and helped people. When AIDS came, we were the ones that went out and tried to stop it. When different diseases show up, we're the ones out front trying to fix it. And do we charge people for that? No.
Yeah,
Absolutely
you're
not.
making Trump's point is it's that he's saying to a certain extent you need to pay up.
Yeah.
Like there's a bill due.
Let me tell you a story about Vaseline. When I was in charge of the Vaseline business, I got a call from United
P.
Nations.
Diddy? Huh? Was it your large customer?
Yeah.
Oh, come on. No, you didn't. No, you didn't.
Here we go.
I'm not even going to touch that. Go ahead.
Odell, I don't.
You invited me.
No, Odell don't have
You
anything to
invited
do
me.
with Vaseline and P. Diddy and baby oil. Odell don't have anything. Odell who? Who's Odell?
Odell, I don't know what he's talking about. Can you
Okay.
explain it?
No. I know nothing.
Anyhow, I got a call from United Nations, and they asked, because Vaseline was well distributed in Black Africa. We had little trucks that would go.
Is
out
there a
the
white
bush.
Africa?
I was going to ask the same thing.
Yeah, is there a white Africa? I'm just asking the
No,
question.
we were in the bush.
We're in the bush. Okay.
there's
Black
not a
folk
lot-
in Africa in
not
the
a
bush.
lot of white
Black
people in the
Africa.
bush.
Okay. I got it.
Yeah,
You
so
know,
we would go to these little
know?
stores and we'd sell our Vaseline.
Post-colonialism.
And
Well, Tarzan,
yeah, he was a
I
minority.
told you South Africa used to be one of my favorite places in the world to be.
It's got great wine. The so anyhow, the United Nations had a
were there
pill.
any black jobs in Black Africa?
Oh yeah, we hired them to drive the truck.
Okay, good.
Yeah.
Okay, I didn't know.
Yeah.
I know
Well-
Africa had diamonds and mines and minerals and people. I know they had resources.
And China is gobbling them up.
Yeah, well, Africa's been
Well, like
gobbled up for a lot.
Zimbabwe and all those countries.
You can picture like what was it when Trump was talking about the black jobs?
Yeah.
China is taking all the black jobs in Africa.
The thing about black jobs, what the heck is black jobs? But I'll leave that alone because I don't want to go down that road. But Bill, we're gonna let you do your Vaseline story because we done went from Vaseline to black jobs to P. Diddy to baby oil to Odell. Have no idea what they're talking about.
See, this is what happens when you bring me on the show.
Love
You
on
had
the
calm
show.
and cool
No,
Marty.
no,
you
we
bring
don't-
me in, chaos breaks out.
Marty's not calm and cool. Marty is the Maverick. You'll see.
I don't know. Every single time I listen to Marty, he makes a lot of sense.
He does.
No.
He just
I
it's-
thought you were making a lot of
A-
sense.
ask
I've listened to
the
yours.
ask the people in UNC Chapel Hill system about DEI. Ask them about what's the other thing you took, Marty. Oh, by the way, I got a shout out from your boy, Chief James. He gave me a shout out. Did you share the show with him?
I did not.
Okay, yeah, he shout out said good words. Thanks for giving him a good shout out. So here's another shout out to you, Chief.
And Dory says hello.
Okay, good.
Meanwhile, back in Africa,
And back with the baby oil,
Yeah, I forgot what I was going to say.
Vaseline,
That's probably a good
Vaseline,
thing.
and black apple.
Oh, Vaseline. Yeah. What about Vaseline? No, so they had developed a pill because a lot of the kids were dying from diarrhea and being dehydrated, and they were getting this parasite from the drinking water. But they had developed a pill that they could put in the drinking water, kill the parasite, and it would save a lot of kids. And they were trying to give it away free, and the people in the didn't feel there was any value to it because it was free and didn't use it. So they thought because Vaseline was so widely distributed in throughout the countries that they felt that if we could attach it to one of our products, they would, as a freebie, buy your Vaseline and get this free.
Gift with purchase.
Yeah, gift with purchase. So they asked us if we could, in our factories. Now, here's the interesting thing: the factories were owned by blacks. Unilever, 51% were owned by the
Black
chiefs.
Africans?
Yeah, chiefs.
Okay, good.
I met a number of them. In fact, one of them I taught how to play poker. We were staying at his house, and he had a beautiful house, and we were staying up, and he said, "Do you like to play poker?" I said, "Sure do." And so we started playing these games, and I said, "Well, I've got a game from Cleveland that is, and it's from a famous chief." And he goes, "Oh, I must know this." And so we take a card. Everybody takes a card, and you put it on your forehead, and you look at each other, and you bet on who has the highest card. And he says, "What's this chief's name?" I said, "Chief Wahoo." He was the mascot for the Cleveland Indians.
Oh Lord. Bill,
I don't even know where to go from here.
now I know where we go. We go here. Marty
Has Bill
from the
not been canceled?
No, Bill's not because it's our show. It's just like Trump going
They're
to
coming after me.
listen. Trump went from X to Truth Social, of all names, Truth Social. When you have your own platform, it works. So, Marty, help me understand one thing. As a businessman, how is tariffs affecting you? And then I'm going to ask you the same question, Kelly. From a business perspective, you build things, you do all these things. Have you seen any effect, and how do you think how you have to position your company to do what it does?
Yes. I mean, we saw a lot of inflation because of, during COVID and a lot of the kind of money that got pumped in at that time. So products have been going up significantly in both construction and in the hospitality business in terms of food cost, everything. Gas prices have been higher. That's been affecting some of it as well. But inflationary pressures have just driven cost up. So tariffs will be part of that as well. Where it affects me in real estate is if retailers lack confidence in their ability to expand and make money, then they may slow their expansion plans. So that could be a bit of an issue. Again, my business in real estate, the main cost are interest rates. And so, the bond market yields are important because you want to see lower rates overall. That affects the housing market as well.
Well, what do you do? What position do you take? Do you take your marbles and go home? Or you quit buying? Or you liquidate? What do you do when something like this hits? Because this is new territory and uncertainty for everyone.
It's not really new in that there's always something, right? So there's always going to be something that we have to deal with. Nobody planned for COVID. You don't plan for the recession that occurred in 2007, 2008. So you just deal with it and you hedge and you manage and you time the market a little bit. You buy low, sell high. So you're constantly on the lookout for the latest thing that's going to rock the boat or cause a problem, and you just deal with it. I mean, that's what you have to do as an entrepreneur. And sometimes you're prepared to do that. Sometimes, the wave hits you and knocks your boat over.
Did you see this coming?
The tariffs? Well, he's been talking about it for a while, so I think we saw that coming. The significance of them, the widespread element, and the market reaction, and especially the bond market reaction. I would have expected the stock market reaction. The bond market reaction was a surprise to me that it would erode confidence in U.S. Treasury. So that was a surprise. And I didn't see that coming.
So, Kelly, on the latest spin of the tariff merry-go-round, with tariffs coming and going day by day, seemingly on President Trump's whim, did you see this coming?
Yes. As I said earlier in the show, I mean, dating back to the 80s, Trump has always been, tariffs are the most beautiful thing. It's my favorite word in the dictionary. He's been saying that since the 80s. So, yes, but did I see it to this extreme? No. And the measures to, the reciprocal trade, his formula for what constitutes a reciprocal trade, he took in all kinds of factors. He took in VAT, which, is a value added tax, which some countries in Europe have, some countries in Asia have. He counted that against you. He counted trade imbalances against you. It wasn't just, I thought it was going to be like for like. So if you charge 25% tariffs on our GMC trucks that go into your country, we're going to charge you the same for bringing in your product, like for like. I thought that's what it was. I had no idea that it would be this extreme. I had no idea that the numbers would be so extreme. But then again, with Trump, I think that's the power that he carries, is that he thrives on that. It's a chaos theory kind of guy. I think he relishes in the fact that you just don't know what I'm going to do. And
Kelly, last week when we were talking on the phone, you said something that I was not thinking about in terms of tariffs. You were mentioning, product being shipped, and so products on the boat, and whether or not that product would be taxed before it landed, or you may have customers that you committed to for that. I really had not thought about how that could take an American company that's in the middle of this and really squeeze them in terms of, you got the products on the boat, you got to pay the tariff to get the product off the boat, and you may have already sold the product at a lower price theoretically, and not be able to just pass that along to the consumer, or you may not be able to pivot to another supplier immediately. So could you, because I found that kind of profound, could you elaborate on kind of how that?
Well, I was sitting watching the what did he call it? The emancipation, what was the term?
Emancipation is black folk.
Yeah, sorry.
Liberation
That's back
Day.
to Black Africa.
Yeah.
Liberation Day.
Liberation Day. Liberation Day.
I was going down
It's okay, no, it's okay.
We were sitting there watching it, and when he pulled out his graph and he said, these tariffs will start immediately. And I'm looking at my partner and I'm like, I think we have quite a bit of furniture on the water right now. So does that mean that I'm going to have 46% a duty? Because that's going to make me insolvent. I'm done. Lights out. Turn off the lights. And there's a couple of things. Immediately, we called our lawyers. Later on, they clarified that anything that was on the water would not be tariffed. So, I mean, we got that clarified. And then anything that shipped before, I think it was April the 9th, would not be subject to the tariffs that weren't related to the original tariffs, which were based on the the fentanyl tariffs. And so that immediately put us at ease because, I mean, we would have been, would have made us insolvent. I mean, they would have been lights out. Even 50% or 60% of our customers, they're the importer of record. So there's, the importer of record is responsible for the tariffs. And so the majority of our customers handle their own freight because they get very large rates because they have high purchasing power, so they get better rates than I could just buying a spot rate on a boat. And so the people that were really concerned were the ones that were the importer of record. So we only had about maybe 50% of our customers where we would have been responsible. It would have been deadly. And so
walk us through that. So let's say you're a chain of hotels that bought a bunch of products from you.
Right.
And they've got, a $10 million order of products that's coming in. It's on the boat on the way over. They don't have certainty about what those tariffs are until it's in the port, theoretically.
Well, for our hospitality customers, they all buy FOB Long Beach. So I would have been responsible.
Ooh.
Yeah. In hospitality, it's almost a standard that most of our customers eat. And I've always wondered why they buy FOB Long Beach, because they buy FOB Long Beach even if it's going to New York City. Now, some of that's changed, but typically FOB Long Beach, we land it and then they take over the freight after it's been cleared from customs. And they did that. That was partly a reaction to the original tariffs or the original anti-dumping that was put on China back in 2006. China received anti-dumping tariffs of 36. I think the country rate was 36% for furniture. So furniture has been dealing with this tariff thing for a long time. It's just they can't seemingly escape it is the problem.
So, Bill,
Yeah.
the big bet for President Trump and his administration is if this works, he wins. If this doesn't work, he loses.
Well,
correct?
It depends. Define what's your definition of work?
Definition of work is the tariffs, because to Marty's point and to Kelly's point, President Trump's strategy is total chaos. We do all these things, and usually in leadership, it's the stuff that we don't anticipate that comes back and bites us in the butt and cause issues. So if I'm having total chaos and I could say The Apprentice and say you're fired, because when I look at The Apprentice, I see Herschel Walker, and I think Herschel Walker is now an ambassador to what?
Black Africa.
Go ahead, Kelly. Just go ahead. Go ahead, Kelly. Go ahead.
I don't know where this is going to go.
Bill has coined a new term.
You know,
He's going to have bumper stickers.
Vote for Black Africa. There you go. There you go. Kelly, so as a business person, where are we going, Kelly? Because we have to come up with something.
so
Because we have to make this has to work.
well, so I can't say
Was
whether
it World War III?
Well, I think this is World War III. I think I said that before. This is just without bullets. This is a economic warfare. And as I said, I don't think Trump can win because I don't think the media and the economists are going to allow him to go that way because of the bond market. The bond market spoke. He got spooked by the bond market. But I want to come back on one thing on China, because this is purely about China. But if you think about it, so we're talking about iPhones. Where was the iPhone created? It was created here, right? Where are all the great ideas? Where do they come from? They come from here, right? Because in this country, we promote great thinking. We create creativity. If you come up with a great idea, you can figure out a way to market it, sell it, and become rich, right?
Tesla.
It's the American dream. But we need China to make it. Okay, and
We
so
need
what is
labor?
We need labor,
we
right?
need a place to exploit
And so,
labor.
so China can make it, and they can make it cheap, and they can make it effectively. And then, but what do they do? To Marty's point earlier,
They steal it.
from you.
They steal
So they lost their ability to create. That was part and parcel to the cultural revolution. And so the great ideas come to China, and then China, they reverse engineer it. They're like, we can make it better, we can make it faster, we can make it more efficiently, we can make it more effectively.
Look at their AI.
Exactly. But so what happens? I guess my question is what happens when the world stops bringing great ideas to China?
Well, that's a great point. But the point is, why do we stay into a Marty, what did you say? A dysfunctional relationship. Why do we stay in a dysfunctional relationship with China, sir?
Because they're making products that you want to have shipped to your door at Amazon the next day. I mean, that's part of it. I think there's a whole discussion we could have about currency as well.
Yeah.
And, you know, it's kind of this, again, this relationship out there of they need us to buy their products. We need their cheap products, but they need our ideas. And it's going back and forth. But per Kelly's point, I mean, we're already in World War III, I think, in a lot of ways. When you look at the cyber hacking and where that's coming from, that's almost always coming from China or Iran or Russia. You've got COVID that was manufactured in a lab. I mean, you've got biological warfare that can occur. And then you've got, you know, significant weaponry being developed.
Mm-hmm.
And so, you know, and if you look at world peace, and everybody says, you know, I want world peace, but you look at history, we really haven't had world peace except through different countries kind of dominating at various times and empires. So, you know, we're probably due. And this is just one of the many ways we're in a war right now.
Well, when we raise our rates, our guy, I forgot his name, he said, do not retaliate. Do not retaliate. Better not retaliate. I'm going to beat the hell out of you, but you can't fight back. Correct?
Right. He was hoping that a negotiation would proceed. And the Chinese, they're like, we know we can win this war because we're fighting with two hands. You're fighting with one hand tied behind your back. And I think he realized that is on our ally side. You know, we talk about our largest trading partner now is Mexico. Right? You're always the quick one with the info. Is it? I think our largest number one trading partner is Mexico.
Build
now.
a wall, Mexico?
Yeah.
Yeah, I think the challenge is if we want to take on China, if you've got a big bully, you don't piss off everybody else in the yard with you.
Right.
You form a coalition to then fight against them. And so, you know, I hope that that's where he's headed, but, you know, it needs to get there pretty quickly because ganging up on them, you know, as a team of one where everybody's pissed at you, you can very quickly be the one that's, you know, beat up.
Yeah, and there's no love for China in Asia. I mean, all these other markets, they're suffering from the same thing. They're low labor markets compared to the United States, but they're expensive compared to China.
Stop for a quick minute. Help me understand, because you mentioned this a couple of times, and I know you've traveled the world. When you say low labor markets, it was a time when we say we were exploiting labor around the world. Don't buy Nike, yada yada yada, all this kind of stuff. But we have a history of exploiting labor because that's kind of what we do.
Well, there's an official term for it. It's called the migration of labor, and so you can see the migration of labor.
Help the audience understand, because a lot of people who are listening to us are not world travelers like you. And when you go into these plants, you talked about certain things. How does it work? I know Bill's traveled around the world. I don't know about the Maverick.
Oh, he has too.
Yeah.
This guy's been. He's gone. You know, I've followed you, Marty, in some of your endeavors, and like he'll go to Germany to look at a beer garden to figure out how to build a better brewery, right?
Yeah, no, and I studied the EU when I was in college, and
Yeah.
it was first occurring. I've spent time in Africa, spent time in.
Did you go to Black Africa?
They didn't quite call it that.
That's a Bill Goebel.
That's a Bill
And you
Goebel
didn't
thing.
even have no bourbon, you know? Yeah, Black Africa. But what do
He
you
went to
see, though?
Rhodesia before it was Zimbabwe.
I've been in Rhodesia before it was Zimbabwe.
Yeah. So what do you see, though? I mean, I'm going, hopefully, if God's willing, I'm going to Africa one day. What do you see? What do you see when you go into plants? What do they show you around the world?
That's a great question. And really, now you see automation, right?
Oh, yeah.
This is not really becoming a labor conversation. There's certain high labor items. There's things that, you know, take a lot of labor content, but cars are not a high labor content, right? There's a lot of automation in automobiles. Furniture is pretty labor intensive. So, but you're seeing more and more modern equipment. And so, you know, I see now whether we go to factories in Europe where it's all automated, there's maybe 10 people in the factory and it's just computers and they're running sheets and everything is being cut on, you know, a computer program on a routing machine that's been programmed to cut the same thing over and over. And so I see a lot of automation. I mean, for sure, there's countries that I've been to that, you know, there are people sitting there carving on a, you know, sitting on a log on a dirt road, but that's few and further between now. I mean, the whole world is becoming automated, and that's really the kind of the funny part about Trump saying he's going to bring back all these jobs to the United States. Well, really, he's going to bring back automation because there's not going to be people doing those jobs, which speaks well. Send your kids to engineering school, become engineers. That's where the future is. I mean, the people that know how to run these machines, that know how to take care of these machines, that know how to program these machines, that's the future. It's certainly not as an employee. What did Dave Chappelle say? I don't want to make Nikes. I want to wear Nikes. You know, I got to always bring Chappelle into it.
Yes, you always bring Chappelle into it. And at the end of the day, China is saying a lot of these Louis Vuitton bags and some of these very, very expensive bags and luxury items that they're making them, and it's really a ripoff. They're making them for all these brands that has a reputation of being excellent crafts and all that kind of good stuff.
See, now you just made the point. That's where China's ripping it off, because they are making Louis Vuitton, not real Louis Vuitton. Real Louis Vuitton is still made in Italy by craftsmen, by fine artists, and they're ripped off by the Chinese that sell them, you know, on these websites. And so you see everybody carrying a Louis Vuitton bag, but I guarantee you,
Rolex is the same way.
it's fake because they rip you off. He's right. Trump says they're ripping us off. That's the right terminology. They are ripping us off.
Why do I date a woman that when I fall asleep, she runs through my pockets and take my money and I keep going back?
Because you love her.
So we love China, Marty.
What do you think?
We love China, Marty. I see this face. See that look on his face? That's the Maverick.
See,
he's thinking about what
he's
he wants to
he's
say.
very calculated. He's
what
thinking,
he says, that's what it is.
He's already got his next. See, they say Trump's playing 7D or 8-dimensional poker or whatever. Actually, Marty, he's playing that game.
Trump's getting played in some of this stuff, but I'll leave that alone because, you know, I'm not a Trump fan, but I'm not a Trump hater because I believe Trump is right about China. I just think that he's not playing his cards the right way. But Marty, let me be quiet.
So what would you do? Let me just ask you. You've been asking a lot of questions.
Yeah.
If you're the president, the second black president,
black president, baby, black
third, Bill Clinton. We keep going.
Yeah, we did lie to Bill.
Right.
We told, but we had to do.
Okay, so you're Trump-esque.
No. Okay.
Okay.
Go ahead.
No. But you're Trump-esque in the sense that you've identified China is a problem.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
They're ripping us off.
Yes.
What do you do, President Odell Cleveland? He's got his Obama hat.
I mean, you know, I've been waiting for this. I lived for this moment.
So tell me, what does President Cleveland do, or what do you do differently?
I would incentivize our friends because I just think that if we can build momentum, to your point, the fireside chat, I could deal with that, but we would have a barbecue in the backyard, not the front yard, because, you know, black folks, we barbecue. But then I would deal with that, but I would go ahead and one-on-one. Trump is probably one of the best negotiators or have the reputation of being a negotiator. You have to sit down and talk to people. You have to see what's the win. Just sit down and talk to people. I would go, you know, we have Canada. I'd fix that. We have Mexico because we talk so much junk about Mexico. I'll fix that. And then where are my allies? Let's get together and then identify who we're going to go after. If we're going to go after China, let me have momentum before I just piss everybody off. And that's what I would do. And then I would figure out, I would pull the sheets off of whatever's going on between the United States and Russia right now. And I know you said that's a red herring for Democrats. I'm a Democrat, you know, but something's going on there. I would look at the Ukraine situation because there's no way NATO can, whether they're paying their fair share or not. I agree they're not paying their fair share, but that's the relationship we had. So it's a way that you break up with women. I need to give everybody the lesson
Odell,
on
you're such
women.
a nice guy.
Don't you do it?
You are definitely a
You do it by a text.
a carrot versus a stick guy. So you're wanting everybody to get along.
I think,
You know, and wanting, you know, again, all these wonderful things to happen. And I think you're saying, hey, I'm going to go in and give them that Odell charm and they're going to listen to me. Trump's coming in with the baseball bat going like Furio style from The Sopranos, where he's going to smash things up. And there's just two different approaches. And I would say, I think both approaches can work in the certain circumstances. But we haven't had somebody come in and kind of tear things up in a while. And that chainsaw approach, the infamous Elon with a chainsaw,
idiot.
is sometimes that's needed too. I mean, you got to have good cop, bad cop.
Yeah.
sometimes.
Yeah, but they shut Elon down. You haven't seen Elon on TV anymore because a lot of the Trump supporters was like, listen, you got to get that idiot out of there. We didn't vote for Elon. We voted for Trump. But to your point, I'm not saying I'm right, but I'm definitely not wrong. But at the end of the day, I think to your point, you do need a disruptor. But if you know where you're going, because unintended consequences are still consequences. And to Kelly's point, who's the end user? Who's going to pay this? Because usually it pushed down to the consumer, right? But if we say we're not going to pay for it, then what do you do?
Well, that's it. If we stop spending, basically we're saying we're not paying for it.
Well, and that's why the bond market reacted the way they did, because they knew that we were headed for a recession. I mean, that's just the way it works.
Well, in some ways, though, Odell, we talk about this addiction that we have to cheap Chinese products.
Yes.
And one way to break people of an addiction is you make it less appealing, less affordable. And you take some of the different flavoring that's allowed in the foods out, and people don't eat the Captain Crunch anymore.
Right. You're right.
Because the RFK approach.
Yeah.
But you raise some of these prices and maybe you publicize. I think probably he should publicize what's going on and paint China as the villain that they are. Talk more about intellectual property, talk more about environmental issues, talk more about labor laws, and say, hey, look, we're doing this. And, I know you don't like it, but it's going to be good for you because otherwise you're effectively putting other parts of the world in slavery or shifting this environmental issue out of sight, out of mind, or, taking America's competitiveness through intellectual property and giving it away. That's where he should be hitting on the messaging, not just this negotiating.
Marty, you're right, Maverick. You're absolutely right. The only issue that
he needs to be our trade ambassador.
Yeah, but the only issue I would have, though, you have to play it straight. Because when you give these carve-outs, you say, we hate China. Oh, but by the way, all these guys who are sitting up there at my inaugural celebration and donated money to me, we're going to carve their stuff out.
They clarified that today.
Okay,
and I just happened to hear it. That's because they're going to put, there's whatever they call Section 232. Those carve outs are actually going to go into the semiconductors because I think they're looking at China right now as in the they're going to bring on anti-dumping.
Okay.
So I'm not sure that the carve out is more a carve out and more about we're moving the bucket. We're going to put it into the anti-dumping bucket. Now, what it does do is it gives a reprieve, right? Because these anti-dumping reviews can go on for months. So they can, in part, it's kicking the ball down the field, but they've said that this isn't a carve out. This is going to go into the semiconductors.
Did anybody give furniture a carve out?
No, but I mean, there's not much furniture coming from China anymore anyway.
Well, anywhere. I mean, so I'm not disputing it. I'm just thinking that those who are friendly to the White House are friendly to them. And that's the point. That's the only point I'm trying to
Well, the whole world got 10%, and the country that was the closest to being able to duplicate what China does, and they're less of a global threat, is Vietnam. But Vietnam got slapped with 46. I think that shocked everybody. I mean, anybody in multiple industries that I know, with people were just like, I didn't see that coming. I mean, we knew that it was coming, and I think that was part and parcel to the fact that what I mentioned earlier, because China is just using Vietnam as a transloading. They ship the stuff,
right.
They put it in a box, they slap made in Vietnam, and then they ship it to the United States. And so that's their way of, and then the other thing is that I think the US, there is a pretty serious trade imbalance with Vietnam. And I think Boeing is going to be a huge beneficiary of this. I think John Deere is going to be a huge beneficiary of this. I think heavy equipment, maybe agricultural products, technology. I mean, there's going to be some benefits. I mean, okay. Trump is, part of the shock and awe was the substitute to China is going to want to step up and make a deal first. And I can tell you the Vietnamese scrambled their people to the White House way before Trump was talking about they want to negotiate.
So the young lady who comes to the room and want to exploit herself would be what's the next young lady?
I'm not following you.
Oh, he's talking about the addictive relationship with
The ridiculous relationship.
So if we're not-
No, 100%. Vietnam is the answer. But there's a difference. And I'll repeat myself. Vietnam is not a global threat. Vietnam was a global threat in the 60s because it was the fall of communism in Southeast Asia.
So this young lady
right? And by the way, we're
she's
punishing
saying-
our allies that helped us during the Vietnam War by putting 38% on Thailand, by putting 26% on Malaysia, so that's their thanks, by the way. So
Well,
you're absolutely right.
It will make Vietnam think twice about running Chinese goods through that country.
Absolutely.
Because that's what's creating a good chunk of the trade imbalance.
Absolutely.
So we need to find someone who we can exploit, correct?
That's always how it works. I mean, that's the sad truth.
What'd you say, Marty?
I was saying to Bill, don't say it.
No, I thought
He's thinking about a continent. Where can we go?
Listen.
I immediately switched to bourbon, so I got my mind off.
Good. So, and that's capitalism, correct?
That's real capitalism and real free market economy is that you follow the world, right? And it should be tariff free. One would argue that if just everybody laid down their tariff barriers and it went to zero, that would be the end of the discussion. But it's really not.
It's not.
It's not that
No,
simple.
no.
Yeah.
Yeah, if everybody plays by the same rules.
Right.
you can have
Exactly.
free trade.
Right.
Otherwise,
Right.
fair trade has to factor that in.
But to Bill's point, to reindustrialize America, I mean, I just don't see the numbers working.
difficult.
It's not gonna
Because,
happen.
and who's going to do that kind of work?
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah, we don't have the workers. I go into factories and you talk about automation. I've never seen so much automation. I mean, things that 4 years ago weren't automated. For example, we were in the Mohawk. They make the laminate flooring.
Mm-hmm.
Amazing. These machines basically get loaded and they run themselves. I mean, they have technicians that a buzzer goes off and they go and check it and hit a couple buttons on a computer or something got jammed up and they clean it. And so and then when it gets done, it gets palletized and a machine picks it up and takes the pallet to another warehouse. So when you're walking around, you got these machines running around and then they store it in just any place they want and they log it in so they know that's where it's at. And then when somebody orders it, another machine goes and gets it, takes it, puts it right on the truck, comes back. The bill of lading's already set up automatic. I mean, it's phenomenal. Went to another plant in Chicago. They make mops in buckets. That's all they do. And you go into Walmart or Costco or Sam's Club, they got these boxes and stuff. One machine, they dump in the plastic, including the brushes. I mean, the machine cuts the brushes and tests them. And I mean, it's amazing.
That's what I'm gonna go into the mop and paint.
No, you're not.
business.
No, you're not. No,
That's
you're
what
not. No, you're not.
You just made it easy for me,
No,
Bill.
no.
Made up my mind.
I can
Yo,
introduce you.
we can introduce you to someone. I had a conversation the other day with our good buddy, Congressman Mark Walker.
He's an ambassador now.
Yes, who Marty. Hey,
Trump gave him a job.
Yeah.
Yeah, he's the international religious ambassador now.
Yeah. So what does that mean? He's like an ambassador, like to Ireland is an ambassador. So he's an ambassador. Says yeah.
Well, I think his job is to interact with various faiths around the world. I imagine he'd spend time like in the Vatican or going around to different areas.
He's
and
going
connecting.
everywhere.
Yeah.
He is going everywhere to root out discrimination against Christians around the world and other religious
You know what I
organizations.
heard at the Seder that I was at?
Uh-huh.
Up until 1960s, the Roman Catholic Church had a clause that said the Jews should never have their own country. They should wander forever
Wow,
because they killed Jesus.
that's crazy.
And I'm like, what? And they said, yeah, it didn't come off the books till some late 60s.
It's a lot of stuff on books, man.
They didn't.
It's a lot of stuff on books. You know, we have a history. America has a history. The world has a history.
Yeah.
And folks are trying to whitewash the history, but that's not going to happen.
I got one other
We go
question.
from there. Yes.
What do you guys think of the pro bono work that these lawyers are getting asked to do for Trump?
What pro bono? What lawyers do you know work
I don't
for
know
free?
any lawyer that works for free.
Yeah, what lawyers work
Please
for free?
introduce them to me.
Yes.
Sorry?
No.
No,
No.
the law firms that helped Smith, who was the prosecutor against Trump, all those law firms that got involved, he has sent people in and he's extracted from them millions and millions of hours. Of
What does extracted mean?
I think, when you sit in a dentist chair
Yeah.
and he takes that thing and puts
Yeah.
it on your tooth and
Uh-huh.
yanks it, that's an extraction.
So King Trump is going and sending people into these very reputable law firms and saying, "Do work for me for free."
Yep.
That's one way to look at it. Or they're saying they're going to do some pro bono work that they're offering to the federal government. I mean, the same way. I mean, I think there are some people that do that. I mean, you wouldn't just throw out like all the NGOs in terms of saying, well, they're going to do free work, but if they're doing it for free, there must be a
Elon Musk is working for free too, right?
I think so.
Okay. Kelly, you working for free? I'm not working for free.
I work for free for the university.
I feel like I'm a 501c myself.
Here's the headline: law firms pledge $1 billion in free work to Trump.
Did they say free?
Free.
Free?
America's most
Well, not
prestigious
to
law
Trump
firms.
personally. I think it's to.
It's quid pro quo. There's the. I mean, it's not.
They're going to work on conservative causes. That's it.
Did they get the carve out?
They have. It says here they have a tariff of 40% in Black Africa.
Are you going to title this episode Blackout?
No, we're not. We're not going to title this Black Africa. Bill, what does it say about our good buddy Mark Walker? What does it say about Mark? Because if we title this Black Africa, people are going to be all over me, man. I'm taking enough heat, period. But it's okay. I don't mind some of the heat, but I'm not going to shoot myself. I'm not going to give somebody the gun and the bullet and put it and pull my own trigger.
We love you. We'll walk you to your car.
We'd be fine. We're fine. We're fine. But it's just interesting when you think about it, the whole tariff thing. And I think the audience understood that we were able to break it down for them. And again, listen, we want Trump to succeed. If he succeeds, we succeed. But we also like for him to know what he's doing, because sometimes it just appears that we're on a merry-go-round with tariffs right now. And the tariffs is what we're talking about, but there's so many other issues that's happening at this time. In the Black community, we're hearing that Trump's getting ready to go, after the Civil Rights Museum in D.C., and that's going to be a fight that he can't win. And you're like, yes, he can. No, he can't. No, he can't.
Why would he pick that fight?
That the African American Museum, there, not to be confused with the Civil Rights Museum here.
No, not the Civil Rights Museum in Greensboro, the African American Museum in Washington, D.C., that is a mecca for Black people. And you say, why would he pick that fight?
Yeah. I mean, are you implying that he's racist, so he's just going to go out?
No,
I mean,
it's not racist. It's just...
so why would that be an issue? Like, let's just...
I'm not defending him.
Yeah, I just don't get why he would do that.
Clarification. But my understanding is the reason he's doing that is that some people have found some of the displays objectionable in terms of like it was the way it was portrayed. But, again, I mean, that's about as...
they want to make enslaving people a little more attractive. I don't see how that.
Well, I think you should let people be offended.
Yeah, I think you need to be offended by that. I think you should walk in there and say, this is shameful. This is a shameful part of our past. And when you see that, the shock value that we could treat each other, humanity could be so unkind. I think that's what it needs.
I wonder if he's going to go into the Holocaust Museum and say, we're going to attack that.
Well, it would be on the same level intellectually.
Wandering minds want to know.
I tell you, when you walk
inquiring minds want to know. Because I've been to the one in Israel. I've been there and I cried.
The one in DC is
you walk in, you see the shoes and
it's powerful.
It's powerful,
and it happened because we're not a Holocaust denier, and we're not a slavery denier either. What did it say, Bill?
Well, the guy who helped start the Holocaust Museum was a good friend of mine, Mark Talisman.
Wow.
The Eagle Scout. He was in charge. He was the head of the Jewish Federation, and he worked for Congressman Vanik, and he was responsible for bringing Soviet Jews out of Russia, about 1.2 million. And when I was working for Congressman Vanik, he was chief of staff. So I didn't report directly to him. There's somebody between us, but I got to know Mark, and then I kind of lost track of him. And when I was in Israel with you guys, we were talking about you're allowed to talk on the bus. So I was talking about I knew this guy, and Marilyn Chandler, who was the head of Federation here, said, "You know Mark Talisman?" And I said, "Yeah." And she goes, "I worked for him for the Federation before I came down here." And I said, "I haven't talked to him probably in 40 years." I said, "I'd like to reconnect with him." She goes, "Well, I've got a cell phone." So we called him from the bus in Israel, and he answered. and he's talking to Marilyn, and he got to me, and we had him on speakerphone. He goes, "Goebel, what are you doing in the promised land with a bunch of Jews?"
Converting.
Yeah. And we had a great time, but we ended up meeting him. In fact, the kitchen chairs we have downstairs
Yes.
are from him.
You know, it's interesting. When I spoke to Mark Walker, he was saying how, you know, I told him, I said, listen, my friend, I wish you Godspeed. This is a perfect assignment for your gifts. Because
Absolutely.
and I get a lot of heat from supporting and I have Republican friends and people call me a little bit of everything. But Mark Walker, in my mind, is a good man.
Yes, I think he is. He made a quote here that I'd like to share with you guys.
Sure.
He made a statement after. He says, "Religious expression is the foundation of human rights, and whether it's on college campuses in New York or sub-Sahara Africa." Now, what's sub-Sahara Africa? I don't
Black
know what that-
Africa.
Oh, jeez.
So help me.
That's a nice way to say it.
Help me, Bill, with the what's
So
his
Joe,
new
you gotta
title?
train
What's his new
Bill
title?
in the
No,
proper
no.
terminology.
And nobody's training Bill. Bill is Bill. Bill, what's Mark's new title?
Ambassador at Large.
Ambassador?
Yeah, Ambassador at Large of International Religious Freedom. He's got to go through the Senate for congressional hearing.
It's a new title.
Yeah.
Think about what this country was founded on. Part of it was, or a significant part of it was religious freedom. And a lot of people think that means no religion in government, but it's not that. It was the separation of church and state and the idea of not having a pope or a king tell you how you're going to relate to your God. But there was a fundamental belief in God that was part of our country's founding that I think, is a good thing. And I think this idea of going around and protecting people from religious persecution is a great concept.
Yeah. One other thought, since the theme of this show is common ground. How about Bill Maher going to the White House? Did you hear about that?
Oh, yeah.
Bill Maher?
Yeah, Bill Maher.
Who's probably President Trump's one of his biggest critics.
Okay,
went
so-
to the White House, and so his show on Friday night was, like he
Book
took heat,
report.
like you take heat for having a friendship with Mark Walker. He had, he takes heat for going to the White House and sitting, with the perceived enemy, and it was pretty.
You know what he did? He had his staff. Bill Maher had his staff research all the bad things that Trump said to him, like "you're an idiot, you're dumb, your show is failing." There are 60 things that he said. He had it printed out and he took it with him, and he asked the president to sign it, and he did.
Yeah, but that's really cool. But one of the things that Bill Maher said was, I sat and talked to President Trump in a way that I don't think I could have sat and talked with President Obama or any of the former presidents. That it was a lighthearted conversation. It felt like he wanted to listen. That he
laughed. He made jokes on himself.
Trump.
I think Bill Maher is. I'm not going to say that he's become a MAGA guy by any means,
I don't think that.
but I think there's now an appreciation for, hey, this guy is like a little bit brighter than people give him credit for. I think the weakest argument is ever, oh, this guy is stupid, or that. Here's
one of the stories he tells. They were walking around and they happened to look at a picture of Ronald Reagan, and Trump said, "You know what's the greatest thing about him?" And Bill Maher goes, "No, what?" He says, "His hair." And Bill Maher looked at him and he goes, "Well, he did have something to do with stopping communism and bringing the wall down. That might have been a big thing." He goes, and Trump started laughing. He goes, "Yeah, that's probably bigger than his hair."
Yeah, I mean, he seems like but I get the same. I feel that have the same emotion about Bill Clinton. Like there's a guy, and maybe George W. Bush. That was a guy that you could sit down and have a bourbon with and a cigar, and
absolutely.
sit and have a conversation about life. Like he seems pretty human to me.
Marty, your thoughts as we move toward close.
Yeah, I mean, I think the unscripted nature versus, the years of Biden reading off a teleprompter is refreshing in some ways, but then you're like, whoa, okay, did he just say that? What's he doing there? And I think, we're seeing that. I mean, people are definitely more engaged and watching the news and tuned into what's going on in the world. And I think that's a good thing. I think it's all, that we're focused on that. But, I think we're going to see, again, I'm still very confident in America. I believe we're going to do great things. And people should just, again, take comfort that they're here, in the superpower of the world, greatest place to be.
I think America is the greatest country in the world. Back to President Trump. For the Love of Money, the OJ's 1974. That was the theme song for the Apprentice song. And he had Omarosa from Celebrity Apprentice. He brought Omarosa with her the first time. Omarosa didn't make the second cut. Omarosa got in there and had a wedding in the White House. Remember that? And who threw Omarosa out? Who was the chief of staff at the time?
The military guy.
The military guy. He got rid of Omarosa. So, I'm not mad at it, but what I will say this. Give me a nickel, brother. Can you spare a dime? Money can drive some people out of their mind. So let's see what Trump does, man. Let's just see what Trump does. And at the end of the day, we're just dealing with, what we do. Because he needs to win. America needs to win. He needs to win.
I wonder, though, if, you watch the Democratic response to all this.
We don't have a response. We are flat on our back. I think I'm the only Democrat
think they're the ones that were
around
driving
$1 million round table. Is there any other Democrats in the room? Raise your hand. Thank you. I'm the only Democrat in the room, and we
No. I'm not. Well, I guess I'm not a Democrat.
You're not a Democrat.
I'm officially unaffiliated.
Still not a Democrat,
and I will always be that way.
Okay. But we are sucking. We got our butts kicked when Trump finished with Biden in the debate. You ever been in a situation? I'm from the hood, so when they beat you, when you walk out, they put their foot up your behind. The term "kick you in the da da da." That's what people used to do. So Biden got kicked so hard, dust came out of his pants.
Like Friday, he just got knocked out.
But let's give Trump credit. Trump's gonna go for the knockout blow.
Let me tell you,
unless you're Putin.
Debate you're talking about that debate.
Unless you're Putin.
Listen, Will could have debated.
Don't do that to Will. Don't do that, Will. Bill, close us out, man. Do something, say something, whatever.
Will listens to this as he drives long distance, so let's all give a shout out to Will.
Will, we love you, brother. Keep your eyes on the road, man, and don't stop at the Tiki Bar. Don't stop at the Tiki Bar.
Okay, Will, you got to respond to that.
I want to know what's the Tiki Bar.
We haven't asked the question to these guys. How do you find common ground with other people? Let's do that.
I think you do it the way Bill Maher did it. You sit down and have a conversation with people that aren't like-minded, and you find out that that person is a little bit more human than you thought, maybe a little bit smarter than you thought, and maybe a little bit even more witty than you thought. And I applaud him for doing it.
Who set that up was Kid Rock. Kid Rock set that up.
Kid Rock is the voice of reason in this world. God help us.
He's up here an ambassador. Ambassador Rock, baby. Ambassador Rock.
Yeah, you might be able to do something.
Yeah, I think the first thing you have to start with is understanding that you can disagree with someone else and it's not the end of the world. And if you can come to that realization that someone else can hold a different opinion than you, and that's okay, and you're comfortable enough in your own skin that you don't feel like you have to compel someone else to share your worldview only, then you can sit there and have conversations because you're not getting riled up. I see people, they get in these discussions and then they're like yelling and screaming and it escalates, and that escalation from, it's just they're losing the argument, I think, at that point. And no one's trying to win an argument necessarily, but if you go into it and you seek to understand what the other person, where they're coming from, you can acknowledge when they say some things that you agree with and disagree when you don't, and then be reasonable about it and not, too high strung. I think all of that kind of leads to finding common ground.
Very good.
But don't you think it's more fun to have friends that don't think exactly like you? I mean, doesn't that make life more interesting?
Oh, yeah.
Opposites attract. I feel like it's a lot more fun to be around people that, as long as that you can articulate the argument and it's fair banter, right? It doesn't become personal. With Trump, it's become personal, and I think that's where the rubber hits the road on most people's arguments with him. It's just a bit too personal. The hate is just too real, and I'm not even quite sure where it comes from.
Too raw.
It's too raw. Well put.
Yeah, I agree with you, Kelly. I think it's great to have friends that you don't agree with. It's more interesting than an echo chamber. And it always amazes me when you see these folks that all they do is talk to people in an echo chamber, and they don't want to have any differing ideas out there. So I think it's more spicy, to have some folks that have different ideas.
Odell, I never thought of you and I being spicy.
Sexy, baby, sexy. Black don't crack, baby. Black don't crack.
I think that's the last word.
There's nowhere to go from there.
I'll tell you what, we're stopping at that point. Thanks, guys.
Find Bill and Odell online at thecommonground.show. This podcast is a production of BG Ad Group. All rights reserved.
Attention men, here's an important new podcast you need to be listening to.
So this whole issue about prostate and prostate health and all the challenges that we're having with it, but no one's talking. So that's the reason why I started this podcast, so we can talk, so we can get understanding. I understand I'm not a doctor. I'm not a medical individual. I'm just an ordinary, normal guy who had some issues to say, hey, let's talk about this thing.
P is for Prostate with Odell Cleveland. Download anytime where you get your podcasts. And join for the full podcast at www.patreon.com/Odell Cleveland.
Whether you're a big, medium, or small business, managing and growing the bottom line is important. Focus CFO brings the experience and financial acumen of a Fortune 100 chief financial officer to your company at a fraction of the cost. P&L help, internal reporting processes, or any business transitions or events. Focus CFO will help you and your team have a CFO in your company's back pocket. Focus CFO. Learn more at focuscfo.com.